Unit 2 is going to take a similar comparative approach to Unit 1, except for in this case, instead of being Egypt and Mesopotamia with a little bit of the Mediterranean on the side, it's going to be focused primarily on South Asia and East Asia with a little bit of Central Asia on the side for this unit. This video is intended to give you a chronological breakdown of what we're going to be looking at in South Asia so you can create a stronger timeline for yourself. I can't emphasize this enough though. Everything we're doing in this course is a simplification of much more complex issues. But this may most clearly be the case within South Asia. We are not going to be able to do more than scratch the surface of the complexity of this region of the world. As a matter of fact, we're going to be focusing almost entirely only on one part of South Asia, the Indo-Gangetic Plain. That is the area that encompasses where the Indus flows and where the Ganges flows. Now, you've already read Bentley and Ziegler's work on the Harappan civilization, and they make the case that the modern Dravidian culture is a descendant of the Harappan civilization. This may be true, and we're going to go ahead and treat it as such within this course. But the history of modern Indian culture most clearly starts with the Aryan Migration. Now, the time period within this is debated. Within our master timeline, we're counting from 1650 to 1000 BCE as the period of migration within South Asia, out of the Persian Plateau and north of it as well. And then from the years 1000 to 600-ish BCE, the Aryans settled the entire Indo-Gangetic Plain. Your sources, however, include a few different dates. In your religion and culture work, it goes back to the year 2000 BCE. Bentley and Ziegler say that the Indo-Gangetic settlements go all the way up to the year 500 BCE. So you can work with any of these times, but it's important to remember that whenever you provide a controversial date, you need to cite who you're getting that date from. Now, this initial settlement within South Asia, the one taking place from 1650 to 1000 BCE, is often called the early Vedic period, and is the time when the Rig Veda was constructed. You'll be reading more about this. That later Vedic age, from 1000 to 600 BCE, is also the period of what we call Janapadas. This is a period of multiple tribal territories where the Aryans were not yet settled down. It's worth noting that that term Janapada is very similar to the Latin term of genus, or people, and pedi, or foot. The Janapadas were literally the foothold of a group of people, or the foothold of different tribes throughout the Indo-Gangetic Plain. There was some settlement during this period, though not very large ones. And this is also the time that the rest of the Vedas were constructed. Again, you're going to be reading about them more coming up pretty quick here. And starting around the year 800 BCE, so right in the middle of this late Vedic period, we have at the beginning of the next stage of religious texts within South Asia, something called the Upanishads. The Upanishads become the basis for refining those old Vedas into what we can think of as the religion of Hinduism. This late Vedic age of the Janapadas gives way to the period of the Mahajanapadas. And again, these Indo-European words that tie together are appearing here. Maha, which can be translated as major or greater. These are the major footholds of the people, or the greater footholds of the people. And the Mahajanapadas were supposedly 16 different settled kingdoms. It's during this time, around the year 400 BCE, that the Upanishadic transition was complete. In other words, right in the middle of this period of the Mahajanapadas, we can say that we have a true proto-Hinduism that has emerged. Though, as your sources will note, the Upanishads will continue to be written for over another 1,000 years. By the end of the Upanishadic transition, we have again a proto-Hinduism that has emerged, not exactly the classical period of Hinduism. But we need to make a quick note on that term Hindu. This is a controversial term, particularly since the colonization of India by the Brits in the 19th century. Like the term India, this is a mispronunciation of the word Indus, as in the Indus River. That river was sometimes also called the Sindhu River. And many of the Turkish people that will arrive later on mispronounce that as Hindu, referring to all the people who live beyond the Sindhu River as Sindhus or Hindus. Hindu is not a word that is used within the classical period of India. As a matter of fact, like most religions, they didn't give a name to this religion. It was simply the way that they followed. but it is a word that is used by the modern Indian government, and is the word that we will be using within this class. Back to it though, just as the Hindu religion or the Proto-Hindu religion was starting to develop, we had an answer to it as well. Two other major religions, Buddhism and Jainism, appeared during the Mahajanapadic period, and these religions were emerging in response to a few factors. The rise of city life. Settling down and accumulating material wealth quite often leaves a spiritual vacuum. Additionally, we see the increased power of the priestly class within Hinduism at this time. Buddhism and Jainism are in many ways pushbacks against some type of priestly power. And we also see an increased focus on rituals by the Hindu priestly group that is solidifying its power at this time. Rituals don't make for the best soul food. In the 320s BCE, the Mauryan Empire unified all the different kingdoms of the Indo-Gangetic Plain. As a matter of fact, it was even able to conquer southwards, taking over much of the Deccan Plateau and even a chunk of Sri Lanka. It's during the Mauryan Empire that Buddhism gets its first boost and becomes a truly powerful and widespread religion, much like the boost that Christianity will get from the Roman Empire 600 years later. And it is the Mauryan Empire that begins what we call the classical age of South Asia. A quick note on Buddhism within South Asia, it's not a very large religion there in the modern day. Beginning in the Common Era, Buddhism went into a 1,000-year-long decline within South Asia. And by the time we get to the 1200s, there's only a small group of Buddhists who live in the eastern portion of the Gangetic Plain. Though as we'll see, this is about the same time that Buddhism gets a major foothold within China. The Mauryan Empire fell apart by 185 BCE, and South Asia reverted back to its somewhat standard state of disunity. Part of the reason why South Asia contains so many different cultures is because that for the bulk of its history, it has been a land made up of many different kingdoms and empires. It's unusual for South Asia to be unified as it is now underneath the country of India. Near the end of this classical period, we have one more unification of the Indo-Gangetic Plain, plus a few other areas of South Asia, underneath a dynasty called the Gupta Dynasty. This was the absolute golden age of Hinduism. So as you can see, there are two periods of semi-unification within South Asia. It didn't have the consistent empires that the Mediterranean or the Nile Delta or Mesopotamia or China will have, which meant that it had a continual dialogue of different ideas that were butting up against each other and creating new ideas out of those old ones. A complex system indeed, but make sure you keep in mind this chronology of its development.